Hi guys. That's how you start a YouTube video, isn't it, these days? Hi guys. Um, Good day and welcome to another edition of Crapper, now known as the Classic Rock and Prog Almanac, minor rebrand. Um, and with today it's with myself, Tim Appleton, and my good friend, the drumming potter or potting drummer, Sean Hall.
Good morrow, Strawbs fans.
Okay, well, as you know, spoiler alert, we're doing From the Witchwood today by the Strawbs, which is an album that we have been wanting to do for a while because we're big fans of the Strawbs and big fans of this album, as I think we've made roundly clear in previous episodes. Before we begin, Sean, should we just do a quick roundup of the week? What have you been up to this week?
Why not? Well, I had a very nice excursion to Aldborough, and I got lost disappearing up the high street, looking for the loos. And on my journey, I actually found Benjamin Britten's house, but I didn't find any loos.
All right. Good. So that's roundup of the week now. Did you go to? Can I just ask? Did you go to Snape Maltings in Aldborough? Did you go to the? Because it's an artistic community, isn't it?
Yeah, I have been there before, but no, this was purely to the beach and near the boating lake and the moot hall. So it was
Oh
sort of a
right.
family event, really. But yeah, a very nice time had by all.
Right. Well, that is. I'm sure our listeners will be pleased to hear that. Benjamin Britten is from Lowestoft, you know, which is my neck of the woods.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, Although he's not the most famous, even though he's one of the most famous composers of the 20th century, he's not one of the most famous musical progenies, is that the word, of Lowestoft, because slightly more famous is The Darkness,
Ah,
um, who we once supported. Did you know that? Me and Peter once supported them.
yes. Yeah. I'd left the band at that point, I think.
You left the band when you found out we were going to support The Darkness.
Something like that.
Um, Good. Well, I haven't had anything quite as interesting as you finding the toilets in in Aldborough. Although the electricity went out in the entire Iberian Peninsula for a day. That was yesterday. That was quite an experience. That's quite a big experience, actually, isn't it? But it's got nothing to do with music, unfortunately. Um,
But a lot to do with atmospheric phenomena, apparently.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That basically means that I think that's someone trying to cover their ass, basically. I mean, the thing is that you actually, I mean, you're thinking like in your sort of imaginary, you're set up for like the apocalypse, aren't you? Because there's so much, like media stuff about it, like, sort of from like, I don't know, Walking Dead to The Last of Us, these sorts of programs where, they're sort of preparing us all for the apocalypse. But of course, when it actually happens, like yesterday, because we had for a whole day, we had no idea what was going on, no electricity, and of course, no way of finding out what was going on. So it felt kind of apocalyptic. But of course, what you don't realize is just how boring it is, the
Mm.
apocalypse. Um, you
Yeah.
know,
You see, this is an important lesson that you need to stockpile a few tins of baked beans in the cupboard.
that's right. That's right.
Toilet rolls was the other one, wasn't it? Toilet rolls from, remember COVID?
Oh, yeah, that's right. It was a bit like a COVID reprise.
Yeah,
But it was
yeah.
just like loads of people waiting to catch the bus, waiting for a
Yeah.
bus. I mean that it's not as exciting as it might seem, the apocalypse. Anyway, good. So that's roundup of the week. Let's get on with something equally insignificant, which is our album review. Let's begin with. Well, can I throw a question at you to begin, Sean? Strawbs.
Hmm.
What do we think of the Strawbs before we get onto the album itself? I mean, I always think of the Strawbs as being a bit like a sort of Church of England house band.
they're an odd one, aren't they? Because they've kind of got one foot in the folk movement,
Mm,
and they had that association with Sandy Denny,
mm,
and then they're sort of breaking out of that. I'd say then they've got a foot in the burgeoning sort of prog rock movement, and obviously we're going to talk about Rick Wakeman, aren't we? But some of their early to mid '70s albums were quite proggish, like that. They replaced Rick with Blue Weaver,
mm.
known for his Mellotron work. But yeah, they're an odd one, and then they sort of achieve a semblance of fame, don't they? With Lay Down and Part of the Union, and they're almost like a sort of one foot in the pub folk rock movement, I'd say. So they're an interesting
Is that
little
a movement?
but they're sort of hard to place, and I think they get a little bit forgotten, and I hope if anything we can contribute to their resurgence this evening.
Imagine that'd be quite an achievement, wouldn't it? So I think that yeah, you're right. I mean, I think that they wrote some great songs, sort of perhaps more later on,
Mm.
not just sort of hit singles, but like some really sort of like epically good rock songs. But actually, the period that we're covering today is the earlier period when the songs don't. I mean, I have to be careful here because I don't want to sort of offend any Strawbs fans. But I think that in this earlier period, the songs are a bit weirder. They're not really sort of like classic like pop rock songs,
Mm.
which is something that they were trying to do a bit later on. They're much more low key. But I do think that I think in this early period, for me, it's all about the framing. I don't know if you would agree with that. It's about the way, the sort of the ordering of the tracks, and the way the lyrics work programmatically. And I would say that this album is perhaps the greatest example of them kind of programming the album in such a way that it really it's all framed perfectly. It works perfectly as a sort of total artistic product, as it were. But it's not about the songs exactly. It's about the way that they frame them. Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah, I know. The other thing I was going to say that at times this album slightly reminds me a little bit of Trespass by Genesis, and
Okay.
I think it's Dave Cousins because we talked about this, that is slightly reminiscent of Peter Gabriel,
Yes.
in his vocal style, but it's this sort of folkish, haunting quality to some of the songs. I'm not saying everything, but and there's a sense of Englishness as well, isn't there, about this album? It's very
Ooh.
pastoral.
Absolutely, yeah. I've got a little bit to say about that actually. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. There's a bit where his voice is incredibly characteristic, isn't it? And I read a critical review of the Strawbs at one point, and they described his voice as something like emerging from a boiling pot. Right? I think it was something like that. I don't know if I've done justice to the metaphor. It's quite a difficult metaphor to do justice to. It's like imagine you're leaning over a pot of liquid that's warming, and the ambience that emerges from it. That his voice gives you that feeling. There's a
Yeah.
sort of
Ho-
warmth to it.
Hopefully not like, having your head over a bowl of hot Vicks with a towel over your head. But
Well,
more.
that is a good point. Can I just ask you before we go on to discuss the album itself? How do you think this stands in relation to their other albums? To me, this is the perfect Strawbs album.
Yeah, I think as a whole, it's probably the most consistent. I do like great half of Grave New World. Well, slightly more than half. I think it's the side one is actually fantastic. It's a much heavier album and a more proggy album. Side two for me goes a bit too far into music hall territory. for
Yep.
my liking. But I think Grave New World could have been an even greater follow up, but it doesn't quite do it for me. So it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah. Um, I mean, I would agree with that. The first half of Grave New World is awesome,
Mm,
isn't it? The second half, it kind of trails off a bit.
yeah,
Yeah, these are all our opinions, of course,
yeah,
just
of
opinions.
course.
You know, just
Hmm.
it's like just waving in the breeze. Opinions floating in the breeze. But yeah, I think that in a sense, this is a culmination from the Witchwood. I think that they're sort of building up to this. The previous albums, the albums they did before this, are not quite as interesting. I think just a collection of antiques and curios is quite interesting. The one before. Again, it's got some sort of sweets on it, which I think work particularly well because, as I've already made clear, I think that that's what they're good at. You know, like when they frame the material right, it works really well. And I think um, Grave New World, I think possibly was supposed to be something of a concept album. I think that it doesn't quite live up to it, but I think it's a good attempt at least. Perhaps we agree on that. After
Yeah,
that, the albums are they've got lots of lovely moments,
yeah.
um, but I think that none of them quite works as a totality for me. But some great songs, and even the later stuff.
Yeah.
Um, sort of deep cuts and things like that, and Nomadness. They've got some really nice tracks on them.
Yeah, hero and heroine. I always like.
I thought you might like that one.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's proggy, isn't it? More proggy, that one.
it is. Yeah, yeah, it's good.
Do you think just finally? Oh, we could talk about this for hours, couldn't we? Do you think just finally we're selling them a bit short by saying, because our opening premise today, our opening question, you and me, was a lost? Is this a lost prog album?
Hmm.
Only lost in the sense that not many people have too many people have heard it who've heard all the
Mm.
other prog stuff. But do you think we're selling them a bit short by calling them a prog band? I mean, I don't know really.
They're quite diverse, aren't they? But I think there is a meaty slab of prog in the Strawbs history. I'd say. Mm.
Quite right. And let's move on to this album in particular. Is this a concept album? This is our perennial question.
Oh, it's loosely knit. If it is a concept album, I'd say it's
Yeah.
very wispish. I'd say.
Yeah. I mean, I asked that half jokingly because we always ask that. We keep coming up against that question. But I think that I always feel that there's something of the concept album about this. I think there seems to be a sort of some recurring themes, but maybe we can, you know,
Yeah.
tease that out in the course of the discussion. I mean, I feel like there's well, just to sort of like as a sort of what's the word, like a trailer. Um, I always feel a little bit like this is the story of a stroll across the English countryside, and maybe I always have this very weird feeling that it's a stroll across the English countryside during the Civil War.
Hmm.
What do you think of that hypothesis?
That's reminding me of that film. Oh God, what was it? Do you remember? I was telling you about a field in England. Yeah,
Ah,
that's
yeah, right,
a very odd film, shot entirely in black and white.
right.
And I get the director, but he's made some terrible films since. But this is sort of a bit of an art house film, and it's very sort of. I think the genre is psych folk or something like that. I read a review of it, but I watched it very late at night and
Oh,
hadn't.
is it like folk horror or something like
Yeah,
that?
folk horror. That's it. But
Yeah.
it's worth a watch. And yeah, that slightly reminds me of this this album. Yeah.
Well, yeah, there you go. It's a Scott. I mean, it's a bit. There's a film Winstanley, isn't there? I don't know if you've ever seen that about Gerald Winstanley,
Oh
which is also
yeah.
black and white, which is kind of
Uh-huh.
set in the Civil War. About the diggers, and it's got this. It's got this sort of ghostly quality. The album. And it almost feels like it's a throwback to that era. That's. I mean, say ghostly. Dave Cousins' voice, brings out. It's sort of ghostly in itself, isn't it? And also they did an album called Ghosts.
I don't think he used a bowl of Vicks live on stage though, did he? I mean, perhaps that's something we could ask him.
Let's get in contact with Dave. All right, good. Now, what about the old cover? Do we have a Sean's? No, what's it called? Sean's Gallery. No, Hall's Gallery. Do we have a Hall's Gallery this week, or nay?
We have a very short gallery. Essentially, I couldn't find anything about the Strawbs album cover, so I'm shooting from the hip. All I know that it was designed by a guy called Roger Saunders, and it's obviously like a negative photo, kind of in perspective, looking up at this twisty, gnarly tree branches. But I really can't find anything else about this album. It's got typical. I mean, Peter should be here for this. You know, our colleague Peter. It's got typically 1970s font. I mean, actually, it wouldn't be out of place on maybe a Carry On film or a bawdy 1970s English romantic film.
Confessions of a Window Cleaner.
That's the one. Was it Robin Asquith?
Robin Asquith. Yeah,
that's it. But I think it's a great cover. It's it's quite sort of evocative. The branches look like almost like ligaments or tendrils, which I think fits really well with some of the themes on the album. And
it's funny actually when you're describing it like that, the way that you describe it sounds exactly like the lyrics to "In Amongst the Roses." So that's a funny coincidence.
Well, there we go. But did I say that with a view to the lyrics? But yeah, no. I mean, it's great. I mean, the font is typically 70s, typically curly, that sort of font. But it was 1971, wasn't it? So that was cool. That was cool then. So, and I think it still is. It still is cool. Apparently, the inner sleeve has a tapestry which you might know. It's the Vision of St. Jerome, and it's in the Spanish Royal Collection. So
right.
If you've not around any Spanish royal palaces lately.
But yeah, exactly. Sean is saying this just in case, because I live in Spain. But a Spanish royal collection, did you say? I don't know where that is exactly. It must be in one of the palaces, but I can't remember which one. Maybe one of the lesser palaces. Yeah, so that's on the inside cover, is it? The Vision of St. Jerome?
The inside, yeah, the inner. But I don't think they had a copy of the Strawbs album hanging up on a wall anywhere. I don't think so.
So the front cover we think has nothing to do with the Vision of St. Jerome. It's just
no. I mean, I looked it up and I sort of thought, this doesn't make any sense, at all.
Right.
But no, it's just the inner cover, and I think Roger Saunders was responsible for some of the other Strawbs covers as well. So
I see, right?
Probably an in-house designer, but I couldn't find anything out about him at all. So.
It's a very good cover, isn't it? It's very aesthetic, and as you say, it's sort of in negative, isn't it? So it's tree branches. So it's got that sort of, I don't know, because forests always seem ghostly to me, especially in the UK. And it's got that. So it's got that sort of, what's it called, Blair Witch Project kind of vibe to it. I think the fact that it's in negative makes it even more ghostly, which. Sort of supports my general thesis that this is a concept album about ghosts before they made the album Ghosts. I shall be defending that thesis liberally throughout the evening. All right, thank you very much. So that was Hall's Gallery for this week. Now let's go to the old tracks, shall we?
Why not?
I was thinking also. Maybe we should do this thing of pointing out what sides of the vinyl they are, because I know that's so old-fashioned, but I think if you've got a sort of CD copy, you might not get the sort of topography of the album, like you would with a vinyl LP. So let's start with side one,
Mhm.
for old time's sake, and let's begin with A Glimpse of Heaven, which is track one. Now, this track, I think, sort of establishes a lot of what's to come, in a sense. This is in waltz time, so this is a waltz, so it's got it's in 3/4, so it's got this very sort of formalistic air, as waltzes tend to do since they're dances and so on and so forth. But then all of a sudden in the middle it goes into something completely different, doesn't it? Something which is terribly exciting, and I think that then at the end it goes into something altogether different. So already what you've got is a song. It's medley-ish, isn't it? So you've got a song structure that's completely sort of broken up, and it's almost deconstructed, as it were. And I wonder again. I feel like I'm sort of like repeating myself already, but we've only just started. I wonder whether this is a song about a journey, isn't it? About a walk. I don't know. I mean, a lot of this seems to be about walking. This is sort of rambling. Is that the word? Obviously, we'll be paying homage to that tonight with our own brand of rambling. Someone accused us on the previous video. What was it? Tedious rambling or something like that. To which one
and self-indulgence.
Yeah, exactly. To which one can only reply, "Glad you noticed."
Yeah. Well, just don't watch it. It's quite easy. You just switch it off.
Yeah, people overthink things, don't they? It's just don't watch it then. I think this is a sort of. It's a very romantic lyric as well. I was thinking sort of Wordsworthian almost. It goes back to the romantic poets, doesn't it? I wandered lonely as a cloud. We're sort of like Wordsworthian, but not quite as good. There's a couple of dodgy lines in it. I wrote them down. Newborn lambs that sweetly played, speckled eggs all newly laid. That wasn't one of my favourite lines, but some of the lyrics are good. What do you think of this one, Sean? Do you like this opener?
Yeah, I mean it's like a sort of Methodist hymn. I think the introduction, that sort of and you got that acoustic. Is it a dulcimer on there, or is it just acoustic guitar?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's
I don't I don't know.
It's extremely evocative of the English landscape, isn't it? And then you've got this Rick Wakeman. He sort of earns his money on this album, I think. And he comes in that sort of middle section with that sort of that Hammond organ, that sort of launching into it, and it is exciting, isn't it? You've got that banjo underpinning it as well. And I always think on this album, you're hearing Rick Wakeman in his early form, and you can almost hear he's in the studio. You can almost hear, somewhere across town, John Anderson's ears are pricking up, and in the studio the phone goes, telephone call, Mr. Wakeman. It's yes, you can. Oh bloody hell, you can sort of imagine that during the sessions. And I think they call him One Take Wakeman or something like that. That was, I think he was so busy doing sessions that he'd sort of turn up and have to dub on his part later on. So I don't know how easy an album this was to make. I sort of read all sorts of things that there was a little bit of bickering going on concerning arrangements, and obviously Rick Wakeman had one foot in and one foot out, but the music they did make was great. So yeah, I've got no complaints. Maybe sometimes out of trouble and strife you can create something rather beautiful, all that sort of hard work.
Quite right, yeah. I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, you evoke it very well. You know, he's doing so many sessions, and he almost seems to be like walking from one session to another. You know, throughout the day, and to be honest, he's constantly present on this album, isn't he? That might have been the problem that they had with arrangements. He's just constantly playing, you know, all the time, just like jamming.
Yeah.
To the point where I wonder whether, you know, he's just walking literally from one studio to another, just still playing. You know, yeah, they just walks out, you know, they just plug him in and he just carries on playing. You know, constantly playing piano. He's doing uh, now he's doing a waterfall here, isn't he? Don't you think? Isn't this? Haven't they reached a waterfall?
Yeah, is it a string of diamonds formed a stream, wasn't it? So it's very tinkly, very morning is broken,
Mm.
almost. You
Yeah,
know, he's good at
that's
that. He excels at water-based uh, piano playing, doesn't he?
that's a very good point. So yeah, so we like this track then.
Love it. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's a fantastic opener.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, absolutely, yes. I mean, it's not my favourite track on the album, but I think it does set up the sort of tone for the album. You know,
yeah.
that first bit is not the most, again, the most interesting sort of song part on the album for me, but
Mm.
I do like the way that it sets up the mood, and I like the changes in it. So I think, as I said before, it's a question of framing, you know, and also there's a programmatic element which has to do with like the water sounds and things. Brilliant. Let's
It's
go on.
very.
Yeah.
I was going to say it's very hymnal. I think the start of it, and it's very much like you've gone to church, you've sat in your
Mm.
pew, you're going to sing a hymn
Yeah.
before you get a numb backside. You know, it's very much like that for me. So it's just a perfect opener. That's it, basically.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Um, Track two,
Hmm.
Witchwood, which is not the album title. Importantly, I think it's a reference to as an allusion to the album title, but it's not actually because it's the album is called From the Witchwood, which again I think bolsters my thesis that the album is a conceptual,
Mm.
you know, construction, and this is just part of it. And so this is about the Witchwood. This is about the wood, isn't it? It's another waltz. And again, well, I say again, actually, this is slightly different because this has got a sort of theme and variations approach. So this is quite more of a sort of classical one in a way. And um, love Dave Cousins' voice on this. You know,
Mm.
love it. I was quite amused to read in my extensive research for this episode that they met at a teacher training college, the Strawbs
How
or
interesting.
Strawbs. Yeah, because I think Dave Cousins. I always think Dave Cousins looks like a geography teacher. Um, but yeah, he's doing a
A
lovely job
cool
in this.
one.
Eh?
A cool one. A cool geography teacher.
A cool geography teacher, yes,
Yeah.
not a disgraced geography teacher. So look, what is? I wanted to ask you what the hell is what the hell is this song about? It's a lovely
Well,
song musically, but
you see, I think this is
mm,
it's a quite a dark sort of follow up. It's a complete change in tone. You know, you've got this. I think there is a dulcimer on this. It's a sort
mm,
of medieval sounding lyre sort of instrument, stringed instrument, but
right,
it's kind of like a medieval morality tale, isn't it? You know, it's basically don't get lost in the woods. You know, because
mm,
you'll get turned into a tree, or but actually
right,
in reality you'll probably get mugged and have your throat slit because woods were woods were not places you wanted to linger in medieval England. So I think that's
yeah,
where this is coming from. He obviously he hears this ghostly voice, doesn't he? And he gets loses his way. It's snowing, I think, and it's obviously it's some sort of witch, isn't it? That in
right.
his lyrics, but it always reminds me a bit of the radio. Oh, what song is it? That Radiohead song where Tom York is in that stop motion video. Do you know the one?
Um,
And he's in a forest, isn't he? And he
yeah.
finds a pair of gold trainers or something, doesn't he? And
You took.
sorry, now I'm becoming self-indulgent again. But it reminds me of that video for that song that I can't remember the name. But it's very good. I think it's on Hail to the
Right.
Thief or
I don't think
whatever
I
it
know
is.
the video you mean. Is it There There?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's it. That's the one. That's the one. I couldn't remember it.
That's the fella. Yeah.
Yeah, that video. That video.
Right. Yeah. Well, actually, I mean, I mentioned the Blair Witch Project, didn't I? I mean, that's the sort of can't find your way out of the woods, and there's a witch. You know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a
But it's.
big.
I think this is again sort of this is Wordsworth, but this is the dark Wordsworth. This is like nature as your enemy rather than your friend, right? Because there's an interesting dialectic in this album between nature as friend, nature as enemy. In the end, nature wins, of
Mm,
course, always. But is it good or is it bad?
mm.
And yeah, so sort of, I just can't quite follow the story. He's lost in a forest, and then he becomes a tree, and then he dies as a tree, or because of the tree. I mean, maybe it's supposed to
Yeah.
be confusing. You know, maybe it's supposed to emulate the experience of wandering around a forest. Um,
Mm,
but
mm.
that maybe that's too
I mean,
convenient.
there were these tales written, weren't they? They were basically. I think that's what this is. Maybe. Well, I think that's what this is emulating. I don't know. I'm not inside Dave Cousins' head, but it's that sort of medieval morality tale, basically. If you
Yeah,
do
yeah.
this, you'll die, sort of thing.
Yeah. Actually, you make it sound slightly more Scandinavian than English. That's the only thing when you say that,
Well,
because
yeah,
they
maybe
they were,
it's Christian.
Hansel and Gretel, was it? Um,
Mm.
all right, good. So this is, I mean, in a sense, I think this is a nicer track than the first one. I really, at this point, I'm really getting into the album. I don't know about you, but I mean, you like the first track, but I don't know.
Well,
This
it's light and dark, isn't it? Light and
light and
dark.
dark, yeah, light and dark.
So
Yeah, absolutely. Um, well, on that note, let's go back to light, maybe, sort of,
sort
uh,
of.
and look at track three, 30 Days, side
Mm.
one, track three. Now this is a John Ford track, isn't it? Not the film director. Um, and there's a sort of alliance grows here between John Ford and Richard Hudson, the drummer. Is that right? So there's sort of they kind of like working together in terms of arrangements and writing. I think starting to work together a bit, and of course in the end they left and started a band together. Um, and they wrote part of the Union. I don't know if you and I have forgiven them for their anti-union song.
Well, was it? Was it? Because there's talk that it was pro-union.
Yeah, yeah, it was anti-union,
Okay.
but they benefit from the ambiguity, I
Yeah.
suppose. Um, and also, of course, what's the other one they wrote? Nice legs showing about the face.
Well, let's draw a veil over that one.
Yeah. All right. So yeah. So this is for the first time. This isn't a Dave Cousins track, right? But I think it's sort of influenced by the Strawbs, this developing Strawbs sound, because it's a theme and variations piece. So it's such a sort of strange structure for a pop song, as all of these songs are really. I think we're sort of slightly justified in calling it prog because the song structures are dispersed, as it were. They're more complex than you would get with other bands of the period. And again, I find myself slightly difficult. I find it slightly difficult to work out what this song is about. Is this actually about the English Civil War? That's what I wonder. Because it seems to me to be the story of someone who's like absent without leave. Again, sort of lost in the English countryside, but they've sort of, what's the word? Absconded? Is that the word? From battle? That's the kind of feel I get from the lyrics. But again, the lyrics are all very vague
Mm,
throughout
mm,
this album, actually. So you can kind of, and that's nice in a way because you can give it your own interpretation. But But I was thinking earlier about that when you said, I don't know. I was thinking about that Bob Mortimer sketch with the estate agent that doesn't know anything, you know. Is that a thatch roof? I don't know. It could be our catchphrase, couldn't it? I don't know. We don't know. Yeah, I don't know. But there is a mention of a bomb. So I wonder whether this is also a reference to Vietnam. But, you know, Vietnam, the English Civil War, maybe there's a... Because this is the hippie period, after all. So everyone was sort of anti-war, weren't they, for about 2 years? Yeah, do you like this track?
I don't mind it. It's pleasant. It's slightly a breather track. I was going to say filler, but I won't say that. Oops.
You said it.
But I've said it. He's got quite a good voice, John Ford. I mean, it's obviously not a sort of folky voice, is it? Like Dave Cousins, particularly. I'd say this is where it starts to. This is where is it a concept album? Because musically speaking, you know, the sitar starts to come in, doesn't it? And you know, you don't necessarily associate that with Merry England, do you? A sitar,
No.
unless you know they'd discovered curry much earlier than the archaeologists expected. You know, but I don't think they found any sitars on Civil War battlefields or anything like that. So. Anyway, I digress. But yeah, he's obviously he's trying to get back to his family in the lyrics, you know, so that he can be a free man. So, but yeah, I like the idea of him absconding from Marston Moor or something like that. You know, that could be. But yeah, it's strange because obviously the sitar sound I always associate with the 60s, and this is 1971, so it's got one foot in the 60s still, I think, this album. But not that that's a bad thing, you know, but it's odd that we're talking about, you know, this is a pastoral view of merry old England, and, you know, they're playing a Indian sitar on it. But it somehow works, you know, I'm not knocking it, you know.
Yeah. I mean, so the sitar is played by Richard Hudson, isn't it? The drummer. I mean, you know, drummer stroke sitar player, you know, which is perfectly normal. But yeah, I mean, I was just thinking how bad English musicians are at playing the sitar. You know, there's a sort of
Brian Jones. I mean, yeah, you know.
Yeah. Well, Brian Jones was quite a good musician, wasn't he? I mean, we were vaguely having this conversation the other day. Like, what did he bring to the Stones? Actually, probably the best musician in the Stones, I would say. You know, as a musician, you know. But yeah, you know, sort of because the sitar take is quite difficult to play. I think it takes a lot of work. You know, you have to sort of study it for years, and they were all such chances when they were just picking it up. Going, let's have a go. Right, switch the tape on. You know. This is the sort of this is the English way, isn't it? It's sort of enthusiastic amateurism, you know. But yeah, I don't know. It's functionally it works, and as you say, it doesn't. You know, it kind of fits with the. You know, it brings something interesting to the sound, I suppose.
Yeah.
Bit of interesting diversity. All right, good. Let's go on to track 4, Flight. Now this is a Hudson track. It's quite Beatlesy, I think. This one. And again, Wordsworth. I wandered lonely as a bird this time because this is a sort of bird's eye view of the English countryside, isn't it? And so this is the good Wordsworth. I mean, this is the benevolent view of nature. I think again a medley structure. You know, you have to wait right till the end for the chorus. Now, it should. One other thing before I hand over to you is I think this is the point at which I start. I think I start to notice. Oh God, I'm doing that Tony Blair thing.
Don't do it.
Sorry. So I start to notice at this point that I think that maybe Rick Wakeman is slightly overplaying. Right. It's just non-stop, you know, the flourishes, you know, and I don't know whether. I wonder where, as you were saying earlier, I wonder whether they'd sort of coordinated that, you know, whether he just said, just improvising, and they said, Right, can we
Okay.
do that again? You go, no, I've got to go. You know, there's a recurring theme here. I mean, the bits where he's playing on his own, I think, are amazing. There's a keyboard solo on the previous album, live at the Royal Albert Hall, the just a collection of antiques and curios. And apparently, I think actually, on a more serious note, because you were saying like, John Anderson's on the phone, I think that he got a good write up because of that piece in Melody Maker or something, and he became like a star. They said he's the future of rock music or something like that. But I think yes, probably, someone read, yes, or their management might have been reading Melody Maker, as it probably, I guess everyone was at that point.
Mm.
But I think that, like, this is sort of, I think that's his sort of, in a sense, his solo part there is like his greatest contribution to the Strawbs, and for the rest of the time he's just sort of soloing in the background while the others are trying to get on with their songs, sort of thing. And I think when he's in the bits where he's actually doing a solo part, I think it works quite well on this album. But when he's playing in the background, I sometimes think, tone it down a bit, mate. Um, what are your feelings about track side one, track four, Flight?
I don't mind this. I think I prefer it to 30 Days.
Right.
It's it's an atmospheric piece, I'd say. Again, stylistically, it somehow reminds me of Trespass again. Because you got the drummer using soft beaters or mallets, haven't you, on this?
Right.
Yeah, I like that. I like the kind of the introduction, and then it gets into that sort of more strident chorus,
Mm,
and I don't know. It gets a bit. I'm doing this,
mm,
I rise. I'm a pigeon, in flight. So it's quite a nice start to this. But yeah, I think the lyrics are. You have to sort of forget the lyrics. It's sort of
mm,
something to do with birds and a relationship and
mm.
whatever. But then it was written by the drummer, wasn't it? So fair play.
Yeah, but don't sell him short. He also played the sitar badly.
True. True. Yeah.
um,
Well.
all right, good. Well, I'm going to go out on a limb here. Let's waste no more time and move to what I think is the best track on the album. I don't know. I'm interested to know whether you agree with me. The next track, track five, is my favourite track on the album, "The Hangman and the Papist." Now, this is there's a Top of the Pops clip of them doing this, isn't there? Unfortunately, is slightly tainted, as most Top of the Pops clips are, by being introduced by Jimmy Savile. Um, but I think that was probably, I think they had a sort of, what was it, the short-lived album section. That probably lasted about 5 minutes. Imagine all the teeny boppers going, what's this? How are we supposed to dance to this? Anyway, so yeah, I think this is the best track, "The Hangman and the Papist." I I love this track. This is one of those sort of irresistible rock build-up tracks, a bit like Sailor's Life on Half Bricking by Fairport Convention. I just find it well, and a bit, actually, funnily enough, a bit like There by Radiohead, which you mentioned earlier. It's just sort of builds up sort of embryonically, and then sort of emerges at the end. Am I doing a birth metaphor here? But I love those kinds of tracks in general. It's such a winning formula, and this is one of the great ones. I think it's a real sort of, it's a real tragedy in song, isn't it? Isn't it, this one? Of course, the story builds up. No spoilers. I did wonder sort of how long they could have made this track. Whether, could they have and this story actually, could they have dragged it out even? Maybe they could have adapted it for the stage or something.
Yeah, musical.
Musical. The Hangman and the Papist, the musical. Yeah. And this is where I think Rick is playing well. The introduction, I think, is completely
Yeah.
brilliant on this. The Hammond, is it Hammond organ, I guess?
Mm.
And yeah, I think this is sort of another. It seems like another Civil War theme, although here, of course, it's Protestants and Catholics, isn't it? Although that's not completely unrelated to the Civil War. You're not much of a Civil War guy, are you? You're more of a Norman invasions, that
That's
kind of
kind.
guy.
That was my speciality, really. The sort of the end of Anglo-Saxon England and the beginning of the Norman conquest. But it is an interesting period, the Civil War. I mean, I've been to a couple of years ago. Went to Cromwell's house. I don't know
Oh.
if you up at Ely.
Do you only go to places in Suffolk and North
Basically,
Suffolk and Norfolk?
basically. But there's an end room where it's completely dark because this was Cromwell's house,
Right.
and you go in and it's pitch black, and then there's a light, and there's a four-poster bed, and it's Cromwell's death scene. And I don't know if he sits up, but it scared the shit out of me. Absolutely scared the shit out of me. And then you hear him speaking, and he's like relating his last words. Absolutely terrifying. But
Wow.
you also get to do. They do this at Colchester Castle. You get a little survey. You know, you press a button, and you know, do you in Colchester? Do you think Boudica was good or bad? You know, and you know, you always press good, don't you? And then Cromwell, you know, it was the same. You know, do you think he was good or bad? So of course I pressed the button for good about 100 times. My mum-in-law, of course, pressed the you know the bad.
Really?
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. She's pro-royalist, so
Oh, right.
yeah,
Okay.
no time for Cromwell. No,
I was gonna say I didn't know your mother-in-law had Irish blood.
no time for Cromwell at all.
Ah,
No,
right. Okay.
no.
That's a funny and funnily anachronistic political opinion, isn't it, to hold? Do you think I did when can I just ask? I mean, this is the kind of tedious rambling that we were,
Oh God.
ticked off for last time. But can I just ask? Do you do they do Cromwell's voice?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
It's like a sort of animatronic, I think, you know, or they project his face onto a dummy. It's incredibly creepy and
but
theatrical.
can I just ask? Did he have a Norfolk accent? Because there's nothing creepy about a Norfolk accent, is
He did have an awful. He sounded a bit like Bernard Matthews.
right? We definitely should get on with it because once you mention Bernard Matthews, it's like Mornington Crescent, isn't it? There's nowhere else to go. All right, we're
Uh,
so far down up a cul-de-sac. All right, good. Now, do you agree with me? This is the best track on the album.
yeah, this is kind of the crux on which the whole album pivots, if that's a thing. Um, Again, like you were saying, like his solo, which is sort of proto. Yes, you know, you can, you know, it's John Anderson, you know, on the phone again, isn't it? It's that sort of thing. But but it's a shame, you know, it was on Top of the Pops, and it was obviously they must have thought this was a classic Strawbs track, and yet does anybody has anybody really heard of it? I don't know. I think it's great. I mean, oddly in the early 70s there were a lot of well, I say a lot of bands, but you had bands, especially folk bands, doing hanging themed. Well, Babacom Lee, you had a
Right.
hanging themed concept album. Well, concept EP, really, wasn't it? I think they sort of ran out of steam on that on that one. I think.
That's another one of those albums that's got a great first side and a poor
Yeah,
second
yeah,
side, I think.
yeah. Um, but Richard Thompson. I think isn't there a song about hanging on the Full House album? I think So Fairport seemed to like it.
Right.
And also on this, I mean, there is good keyboard work from Rick Wakeman, but there's sort of a bolero coming in, or I call it a bolero. Is it a bolero or
It's Bolero, yeah.
it is bolero? Well, I never.
No, I'm joking. It's Bolero.
Right, okay. But as you say, it does build in volume and power. I should imagine this would have been a good concert staple, quite rousing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a great track. It's a shame there's a bit not more love for it, really.
I know. I agree. This is, to me, okay, this is going to sound mad. It's just occurred to me. This to me, is like as good as rock music ever gets, this track. It's so good. And I'd forgotten that it had a bolero in it. I hadn't noticed that because there's a bolero in one of the other tracks coming up.
It is.
So
Yeah.
they obviously liked a bit of bolero, the Strawbs. But yeah, brilliant stuff. This.
I mean, talking of boleros, I'd like to have seen Torval and Dean's ice skating version of this. Yeah.
Well, they'd have to dance like the hanging scene at the end. That'd be a laugh.
But maybe that would have given Rick Wakeman some ideas, wouldn't it? For later concerts. And,
Yeah.
yeah.
You're right. A Hangman and the Papist on ice, starring Torval and Dean.
Oh, dear.
And I don't know if they'd have been able to, maneuver their way around the horses, though.
They'd have
yeah.
been pantomime horses, wouldn't they? On skates.
Good point. So yeah, I think that. I'm glad that you agree with me on this one. There's actually another Dave Cousins track on the previous album. Again, I keep talking about just a collection of antiques and curios, but I think no, sorry, it's called The Vision of the Lady of the Lake, and it's on. I think it's on Dragonfly, actually, the previous one. But there is a live version of it at the Albert Hall, which was an outtake, which is on the CD, the CD version of Just a Collection of Antiques and Curios. And that's another one of those songs where he's building up the sort of tension. And he's really kind of gets more and more angry and more desperate. I mean, the Dave Cousins' performance on this is really on both of these tracks actually is outstanding. But my point is that there is a model for this track. But I just think the story is better here. It's more succinct and it's more dramatic, really. Could we say what the story is? Fellas they draw a lot. I mean, I was going to say no spoilers, but I mean, who cares at this point? I can't remember the story. If this soldier draws lots, the soldiers draw lots to decide who's going to be the hangman. The guy who's the hangman, when he goes to do the hanging, realizes that the person he's got to hang is his brother, who's a Catholic, and he's a Protestant in the Protestant army, or something like that. Is that right? Have I said that right?
I think that's about right.
Yeah, just the the idea of it, the storyboarding, writes itself, doesn't it?
Yeah.
All right, great. Let's go on to side two. Now, side two begins with Sheep, which is another highlight for me. If an album starts well, like side one starts well, side one ends well, side two starts well, side two ends well, you've got an album, haven't you? Basically,
you can sort of forgive any inconsistencies. I think you're going to get the odd filler track, aren't you?
That's right.
But I think you're totally right on this. Yeah.
Yeah. You almost welcome a filler track occasionally because it gives you a bit of a breather.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
That's not true, but you know what I mean. All right, good. So, Sheep, yeah. I always think that this is what All Along the Watchtower would have sounded like if it was played by Rick Wakeman. That's my theory about this track. I think it's really sort of dramatic opening, and I like the sort of the tension that builds up in the contrasting section. Where they move through the chords, move through the notes of a diminished chord, which builds. It sounds totally chaotic, and it's because it's about sheep being slaughtered, isn't it? Something like that. Actually, I can't quite remember what it's about, but But I think it's really there's a lot of they build up the tension really nicely, but it's a really sort of hard. This could be like a hard rocking sort of track. A heavy metal band could have covered this track, I think. And then again, it's got a sort of medley structure because the last part, it goes into half time and it goes into sort of major key optimistic twist. And the lyrics go into a thing where the boy looks from the people into the sheep and he can't tell which is which of course is a play on the end of Animal Farm. Is it not? I mean, you know. Um, and the only other thing I wanted to say about this track was that Rick again sounds good, but again, why is he soloing the whole time? It's like they didn't bother to tell him the chord, so he just thought, "Oh, I'm just going to solo," you know.
Yeah.
What are your feelings about side two, track one, Shaun and
Well,
Sheep?
I couldn't actually remember this one, to be honest, but listening back to it, I really enjoyed it. It was almost like, Roger Waters' "Eat Your Heart Out," really, slightly earlier. It opens with a sort of slightly 60s feel, that sort of Hammond that Rick's playing. It slightly reminds me of the Doors a bit, if I'm allowed to say that on this podcast. The name shall never be mentioned.
Yeah, Light My Fire.
Yeah, Ray Manzarek. He was pretty good, I think, really. But yeah, as you say, it's a comment on conformity, I suppose, and so there's sort of a loss of innocence, isn't there, with the young boy section? He's being forced to watch this sort of enfolding slaughter. The sheep being herded by snapping dogs and the farmer's stick. And that sort of silly bleating section that Dave Cousins sings, and that really works well, I think. That describing that awful, must be sort of carnage. And then you got that. I don't know if it's a Moog that Rick Wakeman's playing. It's sort of like a sort of Doctor Who sound effect or something like that. But that sort of young boy section, which is really nice. That sort of, it comes back down, doesn't it? That section where he's watching the sheep and watching the people and observing that the people are just like the sheep. And then the end of it is classic, isn't it? Because he sings, when he becomes a farmer, he'll just plant seeds of love and he'll harvest peace. Or peas. Is it peas or peace? I don't know. Could be, it's an anthem for veganism, isn't it? This, I don't. It could be.
Yes. It's a sort of meat is murder, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, there you are. You see,
Avant
Morrissey.
la lettre.
Mm.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, it's a sort of, like a defense of vegetarianism, isn't it? You guess. People were getting into vegetarianism in the UK at that point, I guess.
Yeah, you had Cranks, didn't you? You had Cranks restaurant. Did you ever go to Cranks?
I did, but it was past its best by the time I went there.
Yeah, it was just sort of soup, wasn't it? And celery, I think. It wasn't bad. That's a very nice 1970s style pottery soup bowls. I remember that.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
I just went for that, really, but there you go.
All right, good. Well, let's move on to track two, side two, track two. Canondale.
Canondale.
This is another Hud track, isn't it? Richard Hudson. I think this is not a standout track, but it's all right, isn't it? It has an interesting structure, I think. The time signature gets suspended at certain points, and why that's an interesting thing to do, isn't it? I mean, it doesn't sound like earth-shatteringly interesting, but it's kind of like, oh, let's just stop, and that's it's kind of lateral. Seems to be another song about a journey. I wrote out a line: Diffin's tale of the holy Canondale, setting sail homeward for his lonely cell. I kind of thought, well, Diffin's tale or Dyfn's tale, I'm not sure what it is, but I thought, oh, that sounds interesting. I wonder if that's like a reference to something classical. So of course I googled it. What a waste of time that was, because I don't know if you've noticed, but Google now does AI explanations of things, which are totally useless, because basically AI is basically useless. I mean, this is the thing that nobody's saying, is that and it said Difference tale, yes. This is the story of a priest going back to his lonely cell, and I thought that phraseology sounds familiar. And of course, the whole AI explanation of different was based on this song from the Witchwood. So it's like, so this is like basically a hermeneutic. We're trapped in a hermeneutical circle here, totally useless. So I've got no idea what this is about, but I would say at least it's another fella wandering about. So that's, if this is the concept album, that's the concept. A fella wandering about. Um, um, Also, Rick is pootling again. That's my other comment. Um, what are your feelings on this one?
Yeah, this is. I mean, it's again, it's a sort of. I've called it a. I've called it a pastoral filler. Um, it's a breather track. Again, it's slightly. I keep saying Methodist, but it's got a slightly Methodist prayer feel to me. But it's mixed in with there's a bit of Indian flute and a bit of sitar lobbed in for good measure. Quite atmospheric, I guess. Again, I like that bit where he sings "In Your Holy Ground," and that sort of texture to that moment. I I tried to, as you did. I tried to look up Diffan and who this guy Canondale was.
Cannon and Ball.
Cannon and Ball, was it Jim Dale? You know, from the Carry On films. But Diffan was an obscure Welsh martyr. Um, so I found out that he was sent to Britain by Pope Eleutherius in the 2nd century AD. So he was sent to sort of convert the pagans. So he's fairly well known in Wales, and he gives his name to Merthyr Diffan. But there seems to be no link to a Canondale at all. So that's been cobbled together out of half a half a martyr and somebody they've made up basically. But it's pleasant, I suppose. This track is pleasant, and maybe you need that after the horror of sheep.
True. Although there does seem to be some trauma in there, doesn't it? Is Rick a Methodist?
He's got a background, hasn't he? In he might be. He might be. He sort of famously became an evangelical Christian, didn't he? Many years later, but he does say he had a church background originally. But
I
yeah, I
think
don't
the influence of Christianity is interesting, isn't it, on these bands in general? Regardless of what particular confession
know.
Rick Wakeman is a part of,
Mm.
because there's definite Christian references here, aren't there? Aren't
Yeah,
there?
yeah.
And so I'm just actually checking it out. I'm wading through all the bits about his heart attacks. Hang on, hold on. Uh, he's a member of the Conservative Party, right? Good.
Right, yeah.
He's a Freemason.
That figures.
Good, good old. By the way, he owes my sister money.
Still,
Yeah,
good
he
grief.
he um
Perhaps he'll cough up after hearing this.
um. It doesn't say anything about it. It doesn't say anything about his religion.
No, no.
I've got a feeling that he might be a Baptist actually.
Could
But
be.
anyway, one of those.
Yeah.
One of the sort of one of the what's the word? Like heretical uh, groups. All right, good. Well, let's move on to track 3, shall we? The Shepherd's Song.
Okay.
Another song about sheep.
Hmm.
Now, this is another song about rambling in the countryside. This time, sort of hand in hand, I think, with a loved one, and getting intermittently interrupted by a shepherd's horn. Which, to be fair, would put you off your stride, wouldn't it? If you're in the thick of a romantic encounter. This is a sort of to quote you, filler. It's not exactly filler, is it? But it's a kind of, this isn't like the highlight of the album, but I
Mm.
think it works well enough. I've put, it's a strummy song interrupted by a flamenco passage, which then becomes a bolero again, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the Rick is doing the. Did you say Moog? It's he's doing the flamenco bit on the Moog, and
Yeah,
that's the shepherd's horn, I guess. Now
yeah.
this bit reminds me of Tales from Topographic Oceans. I don't know
I
whether
like
you.
that bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I'm not quite. I can't quite remember which track it is on Tales from Topographic Oceans. But there's. It might be the second track. I can never remember the names because they've all got two names, which always
Yeah.
confuses me. But yeah, it's a sort of like he's doing the kind of keyboard runs.
Yeah.
So it's a kind of feels to me like a bit of a prequel to Tales from Topographic Oceans. Incredibly, this one, at least the keyboard is. What are your feelings about this one?
I see this one I really don't like. I've just written here schmaltzy and sick making. I think
That's literally what you've
that,
written.
I have. It's just too sugary. I think this song. Like you had in the '70s, you had the film Love Story. Do you remember that? And just sort of, I just find this a bit overdone. I think the sitar's overused on this again. It's like, oh, just leave the sitar out of it. You had your go on it. Don't have to play it again. But for me, what sums this track up is this lyric. And I've got to say it. Waiting, moist and trembling. It was just the time and place. I don't want to hear that. I just don't want to hear that. And I don't know if this was a song, here's a song for the ladies. You've been waiting, you've had to sit through the Hangman and the Papist. Here's a nice song for you. Have a baby sham. You've had a nice time.
Yeah.
Now,
Check out my shepherd's horn.
check out my shepherd's horn. But I do like that Rick solo in this, and yeah, as you say, there's another bolero in this, isn't there, as well? But no, it's not one of my favourites. I mean, good performance and everything from Dave Cousins, but no, I don't like this one at all.
And you don't think that the bolero passage, like, which is a bit weird, it's got some weird, it's in a
It
minor
has,
key, I think, and it's got some
yeah,
weird chord
yeah.
sequences, chords in it.
It's
That doesn't offset the
it's
sweetness for
not
you.
enough to say. I like that passage actually, but it's not enough to, I can't. I'm still thinking about the moist and trembling.
Yeah.
It reminds me a bit in Carry On. There was a character, we were talking about rambling. There was Sid James played a character called Rambling Sid Rumpo. And it just reminds me, he could have been in this song. I don't know why. I think it was Carry On Cowboy, actually, that one. So it wouldn't really fit at all. But
Right,
yeah,
right, right. Yeah, but
not
it's a
not
bit.
a fan.
I was thinking it's a bit like salted caramel or something. I mean, you've
Yeah,
got the sweetness of the caramel. There's a little bit of salt there at the end with the Moog soloing.
yeah, yeah.
All
Good
right,
call.
good. So this is not our favourite moment on the album, but you know, I used to, when I was a kid, when my parents used to get the Radio Times, which would tell us what was on television. And if a film was like really bad, they were quite polite in there. So if it's very sort of British, and if a film was kind of rubbish, their categorization of it was passes the time.
Oh,
So,
great.
like if you've got literally nothing else to do, or you're like bedridden or something, you can watch this film. Given that you can't watch anything else.
1 star, 1 star.
1 star passes the time. So anyway, that's our review of Shepherd's song. 1 star passes the time. Um, all right, good. Let's go to number 4, In Amongst the Roses. Now, I love this track.
Mm.
To me, the album's starting to pick up again at this point. I would say that this is sort of their most successful ballad to date, with the possible exception of, now, what's it called? Um, Josephine, for Better or for Worse, which is off Dragonfly, which I think is a beautiful track. Just get a plug in for that one. And I think it's a beautiful poem. I think like it again. We've got a return to the sort of pantheist themes here. Sort of Wordsworthian pantheism. Sort of very romantic view of nature. Because the Romantics had a weird view of nature. They thought that um, you know, like human beings were a product of nature, and they were nature's attempt to understand itself. That's what the human being was. So this is so metaphysical, this. And they're really drinking of this metaphysical fountain, aren't they, this band? Life is like the garden, they say, while on the other hand, you've got this sort of deserted, man-made house, which is in decay. The man-made stuff is the artificial stuff is kind of temporal, and then you've got the eternity of nature, right? So it's all really sort of heavy themes. They changed the voice at the end. Dave Cousins is singing this one, and then someone else comes in, and I've forgotten the fella's name.
I'm not
Can you
sure.
remember his name? It's a sort of it's the other guy who was big in the Strawbs at the beginning, but then left after this album. Sorry, his name
Sam.
escapes me.
It's not Tony Hooper, is it?
That's it.
Yeah,
That's it. Yeah, sorry, that's the one. Yeah.
Apologies to Tony Hooper.
Apologies, Tony. So I think that I suspect that's him singing towards the end, and it's an interesting change of voice. I don't really know why they do it, but it's quite affecting that bit. And again, it seems to have a programmatic value, but it's not completely clear to me what it is. But it's aesthetically, it works very well. I think this is the perfect penultimate track for the album, because this is just a little pause just before the ending, a bit like you would expect on a concept album, in the way that what's the track? Here we go. This is like a quiz, isn't it? Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, penultimate moment is like, it's not sort of, it goes right down, doesn't it? Lamb Lies Down on Broadway before the end, then picks up right for the final track. But anyway, this is one of those moments, which again makes me think this is like a concept album. This is sort of almost conceived as a concept album. Maybe not in the strictest sense. Do you share my passion for this number?
Yeah, I was just going to say my garage door opened of its own accord, and I don't know if you can hear the sound of tinkling water at all. Can you?
Can,
hear
yeah, but it's nice.
It's strangely appropriate.
Strangely appropriate.
Yeah. I like this. I think it's just very wistful, romantic. It's quite, again, I've thrown it into it's a bit like Trespass. I don't know why, but I just think that. And there's sort of a nice, tasteful bit of harpsichord on there. So I think for once, Rick Wakeman's complimenting the song. Serving the song, as Peter would say, who's not here. But yeah, as you're saying, it sets it up for the last track. I think it's a really nice, a song that you wouldn't normally think about, but it's a little gem. So yeah, it's great.
Yeah. Yes, it's pastoral, isn't it? That's the sort of Trespass thing. I don't really know where that sound comes from. It's a very English sounding sort of sound, isn't it? But it's not exactly. It's not like it's classical exactly. I mean, it's just it's a mood, really, I suppose. More than anything else. All right, great, and then we get onto the final track, track 5. I do like albums that it's like 5 tracks on side 1, 5 tracks on side 2. It feels planned, rather than just accidental, which feels important to me. I love the final track. I'll Carry On Beside You. I think it's brilliant ending to the rousing ending to the album. Also, thematically, it's like, keep walking. Godspeed. You might have seen terrible things on your journey, but you must keep going. Which, of course, is another Christian motif. I mean, why not? Why not say it? This is a sort of give thanks even for your suffering. This is the kind of slave attitude that Christians are supposed to have, according to Nietzsche and people like that, which was for Nietzsche was so dangerous. Even if you're having a bad time, you go, yeah, this is all right. It's like,
It's
basically.
fine.
It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. You're basically ripe for exploitation. According to the Nietzsche, the Antichrist, as he called himself. I think this is, but I think it's here it works as a sort of dramatic motif, and I just love this. I think it's a great song, perfect end to a perfect album. Really, what say you, Sean Hall?
I really like this. I think this kind of paves the way for maybe some of their later material. To me, it's got a sort of real working class sort of feel to it. To me, I don't know why, but in my youth, I used to sort of play on the working. I was a drummer, and I used to play on the sort of working men's club circuit, and I could imagine. Forgive me, I'm going to do a self-indulgent impression. I could imagine, the club compere sort of saying, "Hey, come on, you've had your fun. You've had Brian the magician. We've had Cheryl the stripper. We've had her. Now it's time to go home, lads, and to play us out. It's the Strawbs. Last orders, please. And there's the clinking of glasses. I don't know what accent that was, but anyway, it's sung by. Sorry, apologies for that terrible impression.
That's a generic northern accent. Then.
Yeah, but sung by Tony Hooper again. Is it this one, or is it?
I'm guessing, yeah, it does sound like that, this sort of mythical fourth member of the band.
But, it's great, isn't it? While you've the faith to carry on, I'll carry on beside you. I mean, it, again, could be played at a funeral, could be a working man's club. It could have been a hit, I think, this. I mean, did they release it as a single, or it just passed them by?
No, I mean, it's but you see, again, I mean, you might disagree with me, but I think it's great, but I think it works more as a sort of rousing end to the album than it would do as a single, because it's not quite single material, I don't think, but I think it does work brilliantly as a sort of, as you say, like last orders, please, on this album,
Definitely.
It's not the most beautiful sort of single type chorus that you could have,
But it's very rousing, isn't it? I mean, the line, the road shines clear, lit by the souls of believers. That's rather nice, I think. Yeah.
Yes.
Great lines in there.
That's right. You're right, and you're right. It's more hymn-like than it is pop single-like, I think.
Yeah.
So,
I don't know. I mean, in a sort of sense that you got something like. I don't know. At the same time, it reminds me slightly of McCartney or Wings or something like that. I don't know. I just get the feeling this could have been sung at football matches or something and become a single. But you're right. I mean, as an album closer,
as all the Wings songs famously were.
I'd have been tired. But I don't know. I don't know where I'm going. It's late. It's late.
It's late. But yeah, I think you're right. I think it's a definite Christian motif, though, isn't it? I'll carry on beside you, and I think in that sense we've sort of come full circle here, really, which is usually the cue for us to to wind up ourselves. So unless you have any other final comments, Sean.
No, I just think go and listen to it. It's a real gem of an album.
Totally agree. And explore the rest of the Strawbs catalogue if you haven't before, because they are, there's so many little treasures there to discover. And okay, well, that's the end of another crapper episode. That sounds great when you say it like that, doesn't it? I think that we've got another few episodes coming up shortly. We're doing. I think we've got a Curved Air episode coming up, and a caravan episode. Is that right,
Yes,
Sean?
yeah, in the land of grey and pink.
That's
Coming
right.
up
We
shortly.
we we may have a new series coming up called Pods from the Wood, but
Yeah.
we'll give you more information about that nearer the time. And thanks ever so much for joining us. Remember to like and subscribe, and please comment if you've enjoyed all this tedious rambling. And we'll see you on the next episode of Crapper. So say goodbye, Sean.
Cheerio.
Bye, everyone. See ya.